The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead at Sunset Storage as Maya clutched her crumpled $50 bill. At 12 years old, she shouldn't be here alone, bidding on abandoned units to help pay her sick grandmother's medical bills. But when other bidders saw the rusty lock on Unit 47, they walked away laughing. Maya saw opportunity. The metal door groaned open, revealing what looked like a child's dream dollhouse. 3 stories tall with intricate Victorian details glowing softly in the dim storage room. But as Maya stepped closer, she noticed something impossible. Tiny lights flickered in the windows, and she could swear she heard distant voices calling from inside. What Maya didn't know was that her grandmother had been searching for this exact house for 60 years, the same house that had vanished from their family's attic the night Maya's grandfather disappeared without a trace. The house that held the key to a family curse spanning 3 generations. As Maya reached toward the miniature front door, it swung open by itself, revealing a staircase that seemed to descend far deeper than the house's small frame should allow. But what was that shadow moving in the tiny hallway, and why did it look exactly like her missing grandfather? Maya jerked her hand back, her heart hammering against her ribs. The shadow paused in what appeared to be the dollhouse's front hall, no bigger than her thumb, yet unmistakably human in its movements. It turned toward the open door, toward her, and raised one impossibly small arm in what could have been a wave or a warning. "This isn't real," Maya whispered to herself, backing toward the storage unit entrance, but her feet seemed rooted to the concrete floor as she watched more shadows gather in the miniature windows. They moved with purpose, like people going about their daily lives in a world that shouldn't exist. The afternoon sun slanted through the storage facility's small windows, but it didn't explain the warm golden light emanating from inside the dollhouse. Maya had always been practical. She'd had to be, with Mom working double shifts and Grandma Rose getting sicker by the day. Practical girls didn't believe in magic houses or moving shadows that looked like grandfathers they'd never met. But practical girls also didn't spend their last $50 on storage units filled with someone else's forgotten belongings. Maya crept closer, drawn by a sound she couldn't quite identify. It was like music, but not quite. More like the echo of laughter from a long-ago party, or conversations held in rooms that smelled of fresh bread and old books. She knelt beside the dollhouse, bringing her eye level with the first-floor windows. Through the intricate lace curtains, she could see furniture arranged as if people had just stepped away. A tiny rocking chair still moved slightly, as though someone had just risen from it. On a table no bigger than a bottle cap sat what looked like a complete tea service, steam rising from a miniature teapot. Impossible, Maya breathed, but her scientific skepticism warred with something deeper, a recognition she couldn't explain. This house felt familiar in a way that made her chest tight with longing for something she'd never known she'd lost. She thought of Grandma Rose lying in her hospital bed with machines beeping around her like electronic crickets. How many times had her grandmother's eyes grown distant when Maya asked about their family? How often had she changed the subject when Maya wondered aloud why they had no old photographs, no heirlooms, no stories about the generations that came before? Your grandfather was a complicated man, was all Rose would ever say, her weathered hands smoothing the hospital blankets with nervous energy. Some stories are better left buried, Maya Bird. But this house seemed determined to unbury itself. As if responding to her thoughts, the tiny front door swung wider. The staircase beyond looked impossibly deep, descending into shadows that seemed to shift and beckon. Maya could smell something now, not the mustiness of the storage unit, but something warm and alive. Cinnamon and wood smoke and something else. Something that reminded her of her grandmother's perfume from years ago, before the sickness made everything smell like antiseptic. The shadow figure appeared again, this time in the dollhouse's front doorway. It was clearer now, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. The figure wore a dark coat and hat, exactly like the one in the single photograph her grandmother kept hidden in her jewelry box, the one Maya had glimpsed only once, showing a tall man with kind eyes and Maya's own stubborn chin. The figure in the dollhouse raised its hand again, and this time Maya was certain it was beckoning her forward. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket, probably Mom texting from her second job. Real-world responsibilities crashed back down on her shoulders. Hospital bills, overdue rent notices, the constant worry that pressed against her chest like a stone. She looked at the dollhouse, then at her phone, then back at the impossible little world waiting just beyond her fingertips. The choice seemed simple, but Maya sensed that nothing about this would be simple ever again. Maya's fingers trembled as she inserted the bolt cutters into the metal lock. The auctioneer had already moved on to the next unit, his booming voice echoing through the storage facility, but she barely heard him. Her entire world had narrowed to this moment. $50, her last $50, riding on whatever lay behind this dented metal door. The lock snapped with a sharp crack that made her jump. She glanced around nervously, but no one was paying attention to the skinny girl with tangled black hair and clothes that had seen better days. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed the handle and pulled. The door rolled up with a rusty screech, and Maya's heart sank. The unit was smaller than she'd hoped, maybe 8 by 10 feet, and dimly lit by the single overhead bulb that flickered like a dying firefly. Cardboard boxes were stacked against one wall, their corners soft with age and moisture. A few pieces of furniture draped in dusty sheets occupied the center. A chair, maybe a small table. Nothing that screamed valuable. She stepped inside, the musty air thick with the scent of old paper, and something else. Something sweet and strange that reminded her of her grandmother's garden before the foreclosure, before everything fell apart. Maya pulled out her phone's flashlight and began her investigation. The first few boxes contained books, romance novels with cracked spines and philosophy texts that made her head hurt just looking at the titles. Another box held china wrapped in yellowed newspaper, delicate cups and saucers that might bring a few dollars at a pawn shop if she was lucky. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mom. "How did the interview go? Need you home by 6. Maya's stomach clenched. Her mother had no idea she'd skipped her interview at the grocery store to come here. She'd lied about the interview time, desperate for this one chance to find something, anything, that could help them avoid eviction. The notice on their apartment door gave them until Friday. Today was Tuesday. She moved deeper into the unit, pulling away a paint-stained sheet from what she'd thought was furniture. Instead, her light fell on something that made her breath catch. It was a dollhouse, but unlike any she'd ever seen. 3 stories tall and nearly 4 feet wide, it was a perfect Victorian mansion, complete with tiny gabled windows, intricate gingerbread trim, and a wraparound porch that looked like it had been carved by someone with infinite patience. The detail was extraordinary. Each shingle on the roof was individually placed, each window had real glass, and the front door was painted a deep burgundy with a brass knocker no bigger than her pinky nail. Maya knelt beside it, her financial worries temporarily forgotten. The dollhouse seemed to glow in her phone's light, as if the wood itself held some inner radiance. She reached out tentatively, her fingertips brushing against the miniature front steps. The moment her skin made contact, something electric shot up her arm, not painful but startling, like touching a doorknob after walking across carpet, except this sensation was warm and seemed to spread through her entire body. She jerked her hand back, but the feeling lingered, a tingling awareness that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "Okay, that was weird," she whispered to the empty unit. She circled the dollhouse slowly, taking in every detail. The windows were dark, but as she moved her light across them, she could swear she saw movement inside. Shadows shifting, curtains swaying, though there was no breeze in the storage unit. On the side of the house, she discovered a small brass plate that read Thornfield Manor, 1887, in script so tiny she had to squint to make it out. Maya's practical side kicked in. Dollhouses this elaborate and well-crafted could be worth serious money, especially antiques. She'd seen similar items on those auction shows her mom watched, where people gasped over $1,000 toys. This could be it, her family's salvation sitting in a forgotten storage unit. She tried to lift it, but the dollhouse was surprisingly heavy, as if it were made of real stone and timber instead of wood and paint. It would take both hands and careful maneuvering to get it to her mom's car. As she planned her next move, Maya noticed something that made her pulse quicken. The front door of the dollhouse, that perfect burgundy door with its tiny brass knocker, was slightly ajar. She was certain it had been closed when she first saw it. She leaned closer, her phone's light aimed at the entrance. Through the crack in the door, she could see what looked like a miniature hallway, and at the far end, impossibly, a soft golden glow as if someone had lit a lamp inside. Maya's rational mind told her it had to be a reflection, some trick of the light bouncing off her phone, but as she stared into that tiny house, she could have sworn she heard something that made her blood freeze in her veins, the faint sound of footsteps on wooden floors, so small and distant they might have been her imagination, or might not have been. The miniature house sat on Maya's desk like a secret waiting to be told. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the strange warmth she'd felt when touching the tiny door. Morning light filtered through her bedroom window, casting long shadows across the dollhouse's intricate facade. Maya's mother had already left for her early shift at the diner, leaving behind the familiar scent of cheap coffee and the weight of unpaid bills stacked on the kitchen counter. Maya knew better than to count them again. The numbers never got better, only worse. She pulled her desk chair closer to the dollhouse, studying details she'd missed in yesterday's excitement. The miniature shingles weren't just painted on, they were individual pieces, each one perfectly cut and placed. Tiny curtains hung in the windows, and she could swear she saw them flutter slightly, though no breeze stirred her room. Maya reached for the front door again, her fingertip barely larger than the entrance itself. The moment she made contact, that same electric warmth shot up her arm, but this time she didn't pull away. The sensation spread through her chest, and the world around her seemed to tilt sideways. The dollhouse began to grow, or maybe she was shrinking. Maya's heart hammered as her desk expanded around her, the chair becoming a vast landscape, her pencils transforming into fallen logs. The dollhouse, now human-sized, loomed before her with its door standing slightly ajar. Warm yellow light spilled from within, carrying the scent of vanilla and something else, something like rain on summer grass. She should have been terrified. Any rational person would have been screaming or running or calling for help, but Maya felt an inexplicable pull toward that open door, as if something inside was calling her name in a language she couldn't quite hear but somehow understood. Taking a shaky step forward, Maya pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The interior defied everything she thought she knew about space and physics. The rooms stretched far beyond what the exterior walls could possibly contain, with ceilings that seemed to breathe and walls that shifted between colors like living things. Furniture sat in perfect arrangement, a plush sofa here, an ornate dining table there, all sized exactly right for her now smaller frame. But it was the paintings on the walls that made Maya's breath catch. Each one showed a different scene from her life. Her 7th birthday party before Dad lost his job, the day she'd won the school spelling bee, the night she'd found Mom crying over the bills. The images moved slightly, like watching memories through water. "You're finally here." Maya spun around to find a woman sitting in an armchair that definitely hadn't been occupied moments before. She appeared to be in her 30s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that held too much knowledge for her age. Her dress seemed to be cut from starlight, shifting and shimmering with each breath. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I should probably go," Maya stammered, backing toward the door. Maya Chen, age 12, daughter of Lynn and David, student at Roosevelt Elementary. The woman's voice carried an odd musical quality. "You paid $50 for storage unit 247 billions yesterday at 3:17 p.m. Your family is 3 months behind on rent. Your mother works double shifts at Mel's Diner, and your father left 6 months ago after losing his job at the auto plant." Maya's mouth went dry. "How do you know all that?" I know, because this house has been waiting for you specifically. The woman rose from her chair with fluid grace. My name is Celeste, and I am what you might call a guardian of thresholds. This house, this space between worlds, chose you for a reason. Between worlds? Maya's voice cracked on the words. Every reality has thin places, Maya. Spots where the impossible bleeds through into the possible. This house sits in one such place, and it can grant you what your heart most desires. Celeste gestured to the walls around them. But every gift comes with a price. Maya thought of her mother's tired face, of the eviction notice taped to their apartment door, of the empty space at the dinner table where her father used to sit. What kind of price? That depends on what you choose to wish for. The house can reshape reality, but it requires balance. To give something, it must take something else. The greater the gift, the greater the sacrifice required. And if I just leave? If I walk out right now? Celeste's expression grew sad. Then, you return to your normal size, to your normal life, and your family loses their home next Friday. The house will disappear, and this opportunity will never come again. Maya stared at the moving pictures on the walls, watching her life play out in miniature scenes, her mother's exhausted smile, her own face trying to be brave when the lights got shut off last month, the empty refrigerator they pretended was just fine. What would you wish for, Maya? Celeste asked gently. What is worth risking everything to save? The question hung in the air between them like a challenge and a threat wrapped in silk. The dollhouse seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat as Maya knelt before it in her bedroom. 3 days had passed since she'd brought it home from the storage unit, and each night she'd caught glimpses of movement through its tiny windows. Shadows that shouldn't exist, lights that flickered without any power source. Her mother's coughing echoed through the thin apartment walls, followed by the familiar sound of pill bottles rattling. Maya's chest tightened. The medical bills kept piling up on the kitchen counter, each one stamped with angry red letters demanding payment. Yesterday, she'd overheard her parents whispering about selling the car, about moving somewhere even smaller, about decisions that made her mother cry. Maya pressed her face closer to the dollhouse's front facade. The miniature furniture inside was positioned differently than before. She was certain of it. The tiny sofa had moved from one wall to another, and fresh flowers now sat in a vase no bigger than her pinky nail. Real flowers with petals so delicate they seemed to breathe. This is impossible, she whispered, but her fingers traced the dollhouse's intricate molding anyway. The wood felt warm, almost alive, and when she touched the front door, it swung open on hinges smaller than rice grains. That's when she saw her. A woman no taller than Maya's thumb stood in the dollhouse living room, wearing a dress that shimmered like captured starlight. Her hair was silver white, braided with what looked like actual tiny diamonds, and her eyes, even at this impossible scale, held an intelligence that made Maya's breath catch. The woman looked up directly at Maya, smiled, and waved. Maya jerked backward, knocking over her desk lamp. The crash brought footsteps in the hallway, and she quickly positioned herself between the dollhouse and her bedroom door just as her mother appeared. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Mom's voice was hoarse from coughing, her face pale except for the dark circles under her eyes. "Just clumsy," Maya said, forcing a smile while her heart hammered against her ribs. Knocked over the lamp. Her mother stepped into the room, and Maya fought the urge to turn around and see if the tiny woman was still there. Instead, she watched her mother's reflection in the window, searching for any sign that she could see what Maya had discovered. "What's that?" Mom asked, and Maya's stomach dropped. She turned slowly, following her mother's gaze to the dollhouse. But her mother wasn't staring in shock at an impossible tiny woman. She was simply admiring the craftsmanship, running her fingers along the miniature shingles. "I found it at a garage sale," Maya lied smoothly. "Thought you might like it. Remember how you always talked about the dollhouse Grandma made you?" Her mother's expression softened, and for a moment, the pain lines around her eyes relaxed. "It's beautiful, Maya. It must have cost—" "Just $5, Maya interrupted quickly. The lady was moving and wanted it gone. Mom nodded, distracted by another coughing fit that she tried unsuccessfully to muffle. When she looked back at the dollhouse, Maya followed her gaze and nearly gasped. The tiny woman was gone, but something else had changed. Where before there had been miniature paintings on the walls, now there were photographs, and Maya recognized the faces in them. Her family. Perfect tiny portraits of her parents, herself, even their old dog Buddy who died 2 years ago. They were arranged on a mantelpiece no bigger than a matchbox, displayed like treasured memories in someone else's home. "I should let you get ready for bed," Mom said, kissing Maya's forehead. "Sweet dreams, honey." After her mother left, Maya waited a full minute before approaching the dollhouse again. Her hands trembled as she knelt down and peered through the windows. The tiny woman reappeared, in the kitchen, standing beside a miniature table set for tea. This time, when their eyes met, the woman spoke. Her voice was like wind chimes, barely audible but perfectly clear. "Hello, Maya." Maya's mouth went dry. "You know my name. I know many things about you, about your family's struggles, about your mother's illness." The tiny woman gestured to a chair across from her at the impossibly small table. "I know about the bills that keep your father awake at night, and the fear that keeps you awake too." "What are you?" Maya whispered. "Someone who might be able to help." The woman's smile was kind, but edged with something Maya couldn't quite identify. "But first, you must understand what you've found. This house is more than it appears. It's a bridge between your world and mine. And bridges, dear child, allow passage in both directions." Maya stared at the tiny photographs of her family on the miniature mantelpiece, a chill running down her spine, despite the warmth radiating from the dollhouse. "What do you mean?" she asked, though part of her already feared the answer. The dollhouse hummed. Maya jerked her hand back from the tiny front door she'd been about to touch, her heart hammering against her ribs. The sound was barely audible, like electricity running through water, but it made her teeth ache and her vision blur at the edges. "What the hell?" she whispered, scrambling backward until her spine hit the storage unit's metal wall. The miniature windows began to glow with warm yellow light, as if someone had just turned on lamps inside. Maya blinked hard, certain she was hallucinating from stress and hunger. She'd skipped breakfast again to save the cereal for Tommy. But when she opened her eyes, the lights were still there, flickering gently like candles in a breeze. She fumbled for her phone, hands shaking as she activated the flashlight. The harsh lead beam revealed every detail of the dollhouse in stark clarity. Hand-painted shutters the color of sea glass, a chimney made from what looked like real brick, and roses climbing the walls that seemed to move slightly when she wasn't looking directly at them. The humming grew louder. Maya's rational mind screamed at her to run. This was impossible. Dollhouses didn't have electricity. They definitely didn't make sounds like tuning forks struck against cosmic bones. But her feet remained planted on the concrete floor, because impossible or not, this was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. And beauty had been in short supply in Maya's life lately. She thought about Mom, probably passed out on the couch again, with an empty bottle of wine at her feet. About Tommy, who'd started wetting the bed because he was too scared to walk down their apartment, dark hallway to the bathroom at night. About the eviction notice folded in her backpack, the one Mom didn't know Maya had intercepted from their mailbox. The dollhouse pulsed once, like a heartbeat made of light. Maya crawled forward on her hands and knees, drawn by something she couldn't name. As she got closer, she could see movement through the tiny windows, shadows dancing across miniature walls as if the house was occupied by people too small to see clearly. She pressed her ear to the roof and nearly fell over at what she heard. Voices. Tiny, musical voices, speaking in a language that sounded almost familiar, like words she'd known in dreams and forgotten upon waking. The voices rose and fell in what might have been conversation or might have been song. "This is insane," Maya muttered, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she found herself lying flat on her stomach, peering through the front windows like a giant spying on a fairy tale. The interior was furnished with exquisite detail. A living room held a sofa the size of her thumb, upholstered in fabric that seemed to shimmer between blue and silver. A dining table no bigger than a bottle cap was set for four, with plates like snowflakes and cups carved from what looked like pearls. Everything was perfect, down to the tiny books on the miniature shelves and the paintings on the walls that appeared to show real landscapes, despite being smaller than postage stamps. But it was the movement that made Maya's breath catch. A figure, human-shaped but impossibly small, walked from the kitchen to the living room, carrying something in its arms. Maya squinted, pressing her face so close to the glass that her breath fogged it. When the condensation cleared, the figure was gone. "I'm losing my mind," she said aloud, her voice echoing strangely in the storage unit. Then the front door of the dollhouse opened. It swung wide on hinges Maya couldn't see, revealing a hallway lit by warm golden light. No figure emerged, but the invitation was clear. The humming intensified, and Maya felt a pulling sensation in her chest, as if her heart was being drawn toward the open doorway by invisible threads. She reached out with one finger, hesitating just inches from the threshold. Heat radiated from the opening, not burning but alive, like touching someone's skin. The voices inside grew clearer, and she could swear she heard her name being called in that musical language. "Maya." The word drifted from the dollhouse like smoke, and she definitely wasn't imagining it this time. Her finger made contact with the doorframe. The world exploded into light and sensation. Maya felt herself falling, shrinking, spinning through space that folded in on itself like origami made of starlight. The storage unit disappeared. The dollhouse expanded or she contracted, she couldn't tell which. Colors that had no names painted themselves across her vision, and music that tasted like honey and sorrow filled her ears. When the spinning stopped, Maya found herself standing in a hallway that stretched impossibly far in both directions. The walls were covered in wallpaper that moved like living things, showing scenes of forests and oceans and cities that existed nowhere on Earth. Behind her, the doorway through which she'd entered had vanished completely. She was inside the dollhouse, and there was no way out. Maya's fingers trembled as she reached toward the tiny front door of the dollhouse. The moment her fingertip made contact with the brass handle, the world around her storage unit faded into a swirling mist of colors and sounds that made her stomach lurch violently. When the spinning stopped, Maya found herself standing on a cobblestone path that sparkled with an otherworldly shimmer. The air smelled of honeysuckle and rain, though no clouds dotted the lavender sky above. Before her stood the exact house from the dollhouse, but now it towered 3 stories high, its Victorian gingerbread trim painted in shades of cream and sage green that seemed to glow from within. "Well, well," came a voice like wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. "Another one finds her way home." Maya spun around to see a woman emerging from behind a rosebush that definitely hadn't been there moments before. She appeared to be in her 30s, with silver-streaked auburn hair and eyes that shifted color like opals. Her dress looked like it was woven from spider silk and morning dew. "I'm not home," Maya said, backing toward the house. "I don't even know where I am." The woman smiled, and Maya noticed her teeth were slightly too sharp. "Oh, but you are, dear child. This is the threshold house. It only appears to those who truly need it, and it only accepts those who have something precious to trade." "Trade for what?" Maya's voice cracked on the words. "Why, for your heart's deepest desire, of course." The woman glided closer, her feet making no sound on the cobblestones. "You have a sick mother, don't you? And medical bills that pile up like autumn leaves. A father who works himself to bone and sinew, yet never earns enough." Maya's breath caught. "How did you—" "The threshold house knows. It always knows." The woman gestured toward the imposing front door, which now stood open, revealing a hallway lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow Maya's movement. "Inside, you'll find exactly what you need. A solution to all your family's problems. Enough money to make your mother well, to give your father rest, to secure your future. What's the catch?" Maya had read enough fairy tales to know better than to trust magical offers. The woman laughed, a sound like silver bells with a discordant note hidden underneath. So wise for one so young. The trade is simple, your memories of them. Every birthday party, every bedtime story, every moment of love and laughter. You'll have the money to save them, but you won't remember why they matter. Maya's knees nearly buckled. That's not a trade, that's theft. Is it? The woman tilted her head, bird-like. Without memories of love, you'd feel no grief when they eventually die, no pain when relationships grow difficult. You'd be free, child. Free and wealthy and unburdened by the messy complications of caring. The front door creaked wider, and Maya glimpsed a room filled with golden light. Piles of currency from every nation glittered on mahogany tables, jewels spilled from velvet bags like captured starlight. Her mother's medical bills could disappear overnight. Her father could quit his second job, maybe even his first. "I need time to think," Maya whispered. "Time?" The woman's expression grew predatory. "Time is the one thing your mother doesn't have, dear. The doctors give her, what, 6 months? 8 if she's fortunate? Every moment you hesitate is a moment stolen from her life." Maya felt tears burning her eyes. The weight of her family's situation pressed down like a physical force. Her mother's increasingly frequent hospital visits, her father's hollow-eyed exhaustion, the mounting stack of bills that would probably follow them for decades even if her mother recovered. But then she remembered this morning, her mother humming while making pancakes despite feeling awful, her father kissing Maya's forehead before leaving for work, the way they both told her they loved her even when they thought she was asleep. Those moments weren't just memories, they were the foundation of who she was. "No," Maya said, stepping back from the house. "I won't trade my love for money." The woman's beautiful face contorted with fury. "Foolish child. You'll watch them suffer and die in poverty because you're too selfish to make a sacrifice." "Forgetting them isn't a sacrifice," Maya shot back, surprising herself with her conviction. "It's abandonment. If I can't remember why I love them, then saving them is meaningless." The lavender sky began to darken, and the cobblestones beneath Maya's feet started to crack and crumble. The woman's form wavered like heat shimmer. "This offer won't come again," she hissed. "Good," Maya said firmly. The world dissolved into swirling mist once more, and Maya found herself back in the storage unit, her hand still touching the tiny brass door handle. But something had changed. The dollhouse now felt warm under her fingers, and she could swear she heard the faint sound of approving laughter echoing from somewhere deep within its miniature rooms. The miniature front door clicked shut behind Maya with a sound like a music box closing. She stood in what looked like a perfectly normal entryway, complete with a coat rack and welcome mat, except everything felt oddly proportioned. The ceiling seemed both too high and too low at once, and the walls curved slightly when she wasn't looking directly at them. "Hello?" Her voice echoed strangely, as if the house were much larger than it appeared from outside. A woman emerged from what Maya assumed was the kitchen, wiping flour-dusted hands on a cheerful yellow apron. She was probably Mom's age, with kind brown eyes and graying hair pulled back in a loose bun. Everything about her seemed warm and inviting, except for the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Maya, dear, I've been expecting you." The woman's voice had a musical quality that made Maya think of wind chimes. "I'm Mrs. Holloway. Welcome to my home." "How do you know my name?" Maya took a step backward, suddenly aware that the front door had vanished. Where it should have been was just another wall, painted a soft cream color. "Oh, the house told me, of course. It's been quite excited about your visits." Mrs. Holloway gestured toward a sitting room where a tea service waited on a low table. "Please come sit. You must have questions." Maya's mind raced. "This is impossible. I was just looking at a dollhouse. You can't be real." "Reality is much more flexible than most people believe." Mrs. Holloway settled into a floral armchair and began pouring tea into delicate china cups. "The house exists in what you might call the spaces between spaces. It's quite old, you know, much older than it appears." Despite every instinct screaming at her to find a way out, Maya found herself sitting on a velvet sofa that was exactly the right size for her. The teacup that Mrs. Holloway offered was warm and smelled of honey and something she couldn't identify, something that reminded her of her grandmother's garden before the bank took the house. "I need to go home," Maya said, not touching the tea. "My mom will be worried. Time moves differently here. You could stay for hours, and only minutes would pass in your world." Mrs. Holloway's eyes grew distant. "I've been alone for so very long, dear. The house brought you to me for a reason." "What reason?" "You're in trouble, aren't you? Your family is struggling." It wasn't really a question. Mrs. Holloway seemed to see right through her. The house has a way of finding children who need help, children who are willing to make difficult choices. Maya's hands trembled slightly. "What kind of help?" Mrs. Holloway reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. She loosened the drawstring and poured the contents onto the coffee table. Maya gasped. Dozens of diamonds tumbled out, each one catching the light from the fireplace and throwing rainbows across the walls. "These could solve all your problems," Mrs. Holloway said softly. "Your family's debt, your mother's worry, your father's shame. You could have a real home again." Maya stared at the diamonds, her heart pounding. They were beautiful, and she could already imagine the relief on Mom's face when she brought them home. No more bill collectors, no more whispered arguments after bedtime, no more watching Dad stare at job listings with dead eyes. "What do you want in return?" Mrs. Holloway's smile faltered for just a moment. "Companionship. The house is lonely, and so am I. You would visit me regularly, spend time here. Eventually," she paused, "eventually you might choose to stay. Stay forever? The house takes care of those who live within it. You would never want for anything, never be hungry or cold or afraid." Mrs. Holloway leaned forward. "And your family would be provided for. Think of it, Maya. No more worrying about money. Your parents could be happy again." Maya reached out to touch one of the diamonds, then pulled her hand back. "This feels like a trap." "Does it? Or does it feel like the answer to your prayers?" Mrs. Holloway's voice was gentle but insistent. "Take the diamonds, dear, go home. See how they change everything, then decide if occasional visits are such a high price to pay." The diamonds glittered invitingly. Maya thought about the eviction notice, about Mom crying in the bathroom when she thought no one could hear, about Dad's hollow eyes. $50 had bought her hope, but these diamonds could buy her family's salvation. "The house chose you," Mrs. Holloway whispered. "It knows what you need, what you're capable of. Don't waste this opportunity." Maya's hand hovered over the diamonds. Everything she'd ever wanted was right there within reach. All she had to do was say yes. But something nagged at her, a small voice in the back of her mind that sounded suspiciously like her grandmother. "When something seems too good to be true, child, it usually is." The diamonds sparkled, waiting for her decision. Maya's fingers trembled as she reached for the dollhouse's front door. The tiny brass handle felt warm beneath her touch, almost alive. She had barely slept since discovering that someone, or something, was moving the furniture when she wasn't looking. Now, in the pale morning light filtering through her bedroom window, she needed answers. The door swung open with a whisper-soft creak that seemed to echo from somewhere much larger than the miniature room before her. Inside, everything had changed again. The living room furniture was arranged in a perfect circle, as if the tiny occupants had been holding a meeting. A piece of paper, no bigger than a postage stamp, lay in the center. Maya squinted at the impossibly small writing. The letters seemed to shimmer and rearrange themselves until she could read them. "We need to talk. Tonight. Be ready." Her heart hammered against her ribs. Someone was definitely living in there, and they knew she was watching. She thought about telling her mom, but Jennifer was already stressed enough about their eviction notice. Besides, who would believe such an impossible story? The rest of the day crawled by like molasses. Maya couldn't concentrate on anything, not on her homework, not on helping pack their belongings into cardboard boxes, not even on her favorite TV show. She kept glancing at the dollhouse, expecting to see movement, but it remained perfectly still. As evening approached, her mom knocked on her bedroom door. "Maya, honey, we need to talk about the apartment." I've been looking at some options, but Jennifer's voice trailed off as she noticed the dollhouse. Where did you get that? It's beautiful. I found it, Maya said quickly, which wasn't exactly a lie. Her mother stepped closer, admiring the intricate details. It looks almost real, doesn't it? Like you could just shrink down and walk right inside. She reached out as if to touch it, and Maya's breath caught. Mom, don't. But Jennifer had already pulled her hand back. Sorry, sweetie. I know you don't like people touching your things. She kissed Maya's forehead. We'll figure everything out, okay? I promise. After her mom left, Maya waited until the house fell silent. The clock on her nightstand read 11:47 p.m. when she finally crept back to the dollhouse. This time, she noticed something different immediately. The tiny windows glowed with warm, golden light, and she could swear she saw shadows moving inside. She knelt down until her face was level with the front door. Hello? She whispered, feeling ridiculous. The door opened, and Maya nearly fell backward in shock. A figure emerged, no taller than her thumb, but unmistakably human. It was a woman with silver hair and clothes that seemed to be cut from flower petals. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Finally, the tiny woman said, her words somehow perfectly clear despite their impossible size. We've been waiting so long for someone who could see us properly. Maya's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You're real. As real as you are, child. My name is Sage, and I represent the Council of the Small Folk. The woman gestured behind her, and Maya saw other tiny figures gathering in the dollhouse doorway. We've been trapped in this realm for decades, and we need your help. Trapped? Maya managed to croak. Sage nodded gravely. Long ago, we lived freely between your world and ours. But a powerful sorcerer named Grimwald sealed most of the passages. This dollhouse is one of the last remaining doorways, and it's been hidden away until now. What do you want from me? We want to help each other, Sage said. We can see that your family is in trouble. In our world, we have resources, magical solutions to problems like yours, but we need someone from your world to help us reopen the sealed passages. Maya's heart raced. You could help my mom keep our apartment? We could do much more than that. But the task is dangerous. Grimwald still exists, and he won't appreciate interference with his magic. Sage's expression grew serious. If you help us, you'll face real peril, and if you fail, the consequences could be severe for both our worlds. Maya stared at the tiny woman, her mind spinning. Everything she thought she knew about reality had just crumbled. Magic was real. Other worlds existed, and somehow she, a 12-year-old girl with $50 to her name, had become the key to everything. I need time to think, Maya said finally. Of course, but don't take too long, Sage warned. The eviction notice you received is just the beginning. Grimwald's influence spreads into your world too, and he's particularly drawn to desperation and despair. The longer you wait, the stronger his hold becomes. The tiny woman stepped back into the dollhouse, and the lights began to dim. Tomorrow night we'll show you more, but remember, Maya, some doors once opened can never be closed again. Maya's fingers trembled as she reached for the tiny front door of the dollhouse. The warm glow from within had grown stronger, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. She glanced back at her bedroom door, making sure it was still locked, then took a deep breath and gently pushed the miniature door open. The world exploded into light. When her vision cleared, Maya found herself standing in what looked like her own living room, but everything was wrong. The furniture was pristine. No tears in the couch cushions, no water stains on the coffee table. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow instead of the dingy beige she knew so well. Sunlight streamed through windows that should have been boarded up months ago when they couldn't afford to fix the broken glass. Maya? Her mother's voice drifted from the kitchen, but it sounded different, lighter, happy. Maya's heart hammered as she walked toward the sound. In the kitchen doorway, she stopped dead. Her mother stood at the stove, humming while she flipped pancakes. Real pancakes, not the stale cereal Maya had grown used to. Mom's hair was clean and styled, her clothes new. Most shocking of all, she was smiling. "There you are, sleepyhead," Mom said, turning around. Her eyes were clear and bright, no dark circles, no hollow emptiness that had haunted them for months. "Dad's already at his new job, but he left you a note on the table." Maya's legs nearly gave out. Dad's new job? She stumbled to the kitchen table where a folded piece of paper sat beside a glass of fresh orange juice. With shaking hands, she opened it. "Maya, sorry I missed you this morning. The engineering firm wants me to start early today. Apparently, they're impressed with my designs for the water treatment plant. Your mom and I are so proud of how brave you've been through everything. Things are finally looking up for our family. Love, Dad." "This isn't real," Maya whispered. "What's not real, honey?" Her mother set a plate of steaming pancakes in front of her, complete with butter and real maple syrup. "You're not still having those nightmares about us losing the house, are you? That was just a bad dream." But Maya remembered everything. The eviction notice, her father's descent into depression after losing his job, her mother working 3 jobs just to keep food on the table, the storage unit auction, where she'd spent their last $50 on what everyone else thought was junk. "Mom, what day is it?" "Saturday, October 15th. "Maya, are you feeling all right? You look pale." October 15th. The same day she'd found the dollhouse. But in this world, none of the bad things had happened. Her family was whole, happy, secure. Maya took a bite of pancake, and it tasted like heaven. When was the last time she'd eaten something this good? When was the last time she'd seen her mother smile? "I need to use the bathroom," she said, standing abruptly. In the hallway mirror, Maya stared at her reflection. She looked the same, but her clothes were different. A pretty blue dress instead of the worn jeans and oversized sweater she'd been wearing. Even her hair looked healthier, shinier. A cold realization crept over her. This wasn't just a vision or a dream, this was real, an alternate reality where her family's life had taken a different path. The dollhouse wasn't just a portal, it was a window into what could be. But if this was real, what had happened to her original world? Was the other Maya, the one who belonged in this perfect life, now trapped in the reality of eviction notices and empty refrigerators? "Maya?" Her mother's voice held a note of concern. "Everything okay?" She returned to the kitchen, her mind racing. "Mum, can I ask you something? Do you remember anything about a storage unit or a dollhouse?" Her mother's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing her features. For just a moment, her eyes seemed to cloud over, as if she was trying to remember something important but couldn't quite grasp it. "A dollhouse?" Mom repeated slowly. No, I don't think so." "Why do you ask?" The uncertainty in her mother's voice sent a chill down Maya's spine. This perfect world felt suddenly fragile, like it might shatter if she asked the wrong questions. Her phone buzzed, a text from someone named Sarah. "Can't wait for your birthday party next weekend. My mom's making your favorite chocolate cake." Birthday party? Maya had never had a real birthday party. And who was Sarah? Another text appeared, this one from Dad. "Surprise! I got us tickets to that concert you wanted to see. We'll celebrate your mom's promotion properly." Mom's promotion, Dad's job, a birthday party with friends she didn't recognize, a life that seemed too good to be true, because it was too good to be true. Maya's appetite vanished as the terrible truth became clear. The dollhouse hadn't just shown her another world, it had pulled her into one, and somewhere, in her real world, her real parents were probably discovering that their daughter had simply vanished. Maya's hands trembled as she reached toward the miniature front door, but before her fingertips could make contact, the dollhouse began to glow with an otherworldly light. The soft blue radiance pulsed like a heartbeat, and suddenly the tiny windows weren't just decorative anymore. They were real, casting actual light into the storage unit's dusty corners. "What's happening?" whispered Jake, pressing closer to Maya's shoulder. His breath was warm against her ear, but she barely noticed. Every fiber of her being was focused on the impossible sight before them. The dollhouse was growing, not physically, It remained the same size on the concrete floor, but somehow it felt larger, more present, as if it were expanding into dimensions Maya couldn't quite comprehend. The miniature furniture inside began to move on its own, chairs scooting back from the dining table, curtains swaying in a breeze that didn't exist in their world. "Maya," the voice came from inside the dollhouse, thin and distant but unmistakably real. "Maya, we've been waiting." Jake stumbled backward, knocking over a cardboard box. "Did that thing just talk?" But Maya found herself leaning closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Through the largest window she could see movement, shadows that looked almost human, figures that seemed to be beckoning to her. The voice came again, clearer this time, and Maya's heart nearly stopped. It sounded like her father. "Dad?" The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. She knew it was impossible. Her father had been gone for 3 years, lost in a car accident that had shattered her family into pieces. But that voice, that gentle tone that used to read her bedtime stories. "Maya, sweetheart, I need you to listen carefully." The voice drifted from the dollhouse like smoke, wrapping around her with familiar warmth. "What you've found isn't just a toy. It's a bridge between what was and what could be. But bridges can be dangerous things." "This isn't real," Jake said, his voice cracking. "Maya, this isn't real. We need to leave. Now." But Maya couldn't move. Through the dollhouse windows she could see him, a figure that moved like her father, gestured like her father. The resemblance was impossible to ignore, even at this tiny scale. "How are you here? How is any of this possible?" "The dollhouse collects things," her father's voice explained, and Maya noticed other shadows moving in the background now, other figures in the miniature rooms, memories, dreams, the echoes of love that refuse to fade. It preserves what people have lost, keeps it safe in a place between worlds. Maya's mind raced. If the dollhouse could preserve her father, if it could keep the dead alive in some form, then maybe it could help her family in other ways too. "Can you come back? Can you come home to us? Mom's been so sad, and Tommy barely remembers you, and I—" "Oh, sweetheart." The sadness in her father's voice made Maya's chest ache. "It doesn't work that way. The dollhouse isn't about bringing back what's gone. It's about choosing what's real." "I don't understand." "The dollhouse feeds on longing, Maya. It grows stronger every time someone wishes for what they've lost instead of fighting for what they still have. It seems like a gift, but it's really a trap. The more time you spend here with me, the more you'll want to stay, and the less real your actual life will become." Jake grabbed Maya's arm. "Maya, listen to him. This is wrong. Whatever this thing is, it's not your dad. Your real dad would want you safe." But the voice from the dollhouse continued, urgent now. "Jake's right, sweetheart. I'm just an echo, a shadow of love that got caught in this place. But you're alive, you're real, and your family needs you in the real world. Your mother is struggling to keep your home, isn't she? There's money trouble?" Maya nodded, tears streaming down her face. "The dollhouse can offer you solutions. It can show you treasures hidden in other storage units, lottery numbers, ways to find money. But every favor comes with a price. Every time you use it, you'll lose a piece of yourself to this place. Eventually, you'll become just another shadow in these rooms, and your real family will lose you forever." The miniature figure moved closer to the window, and Maya could almost make out his face. "The choice is yours, Maya. You can walk away now, sell the dollhouse to someone else, and live your real life with all its problems and pain and beauty, or you can stay and slowly fade into a perfect dream that will destroy everything you truly love." The dollhouse pulsed brighter, and Maya felt its pull like a physical force. Behind the figure of her father, she could see other shapes. Her grandmother who had died when Maya was 7, her beloved dog Rusty, even glimpses of the father-daughter adventures they might have had if he had lived. Everything she had ever lost was waiting inside those perfect miniature rooms. All she had to do was reach out and touch the tiny door. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for the dollhouse's front door. The miniature brass handle felt ice-cold against her fingertips, and for a moment she hesitated. Behind her she could hear her mother's labored breathing growing more ragged by the hour. Time was running out. The door swung open with a soft click that seemed to echo through dimensions. Instead of the familiar dollhouse rooms, Maya found herself staring into a swirling vortex of silver mist. The air shimmered like heat waves, and she caught glimpses of something vast and ancient beyond the threshold. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she leaned closer, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. "You've returned sooner than expected," came a voice from within the mist. Not the warm, maternal tone she'd heard before, but something sharper, more calculating. Most children take weeks to gather the courage for this step. Maya's breath caught. "Who are you? Where's the woman who helped me before?" The mist swirled faster, and shapes began to form within it, tall, elongated figures with eyes that gleamed like stars. "There are many of us, child. We each serve different purposes in the covenant. I am the one who negotiates terms." "Terms?" Maya's voice cracked. "But I already agreed to help. I brought you the objects from the list." A sound that might have been laughter rippled through the air. "Those were merely proof of concept, evidence that you could be useful to us. The real bargain begins now." The mist cleared slightly, revealing a vast chamber that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. Floating islands of crystalline rock drifted through the space, connected by bridges of pure light. On the nearest island stood the figure speaking to her, tall and ethereal, with skin that looked like moonlight on water and hair that moved as if underwater. Maya forced herself to stay calm, though every instinct screamed at her to run. "What do you want from me?" "You seek healing for your mother, yes? Life restored to that which is fading?" The being gestured gracefully with hands that had too many joints. "Such magic comes at a price. We require a permanent anchor in your world, someone to serve as our agent, our eyes and ears." "You want me to spy for you?" "Nothing so crude. We need someone who can move freely in your realm, someone who can acquire things for us, objects of power, artifacts that have been lost to our kind." The being's smile revealed teeth like polished pearls. "In return, not only will your mother live, but your family will want for nothing. Wealth, comfort, security, all of this can be yours." Maya thought of her father's face when the eviction notice arrived, of the way her mother pretended the pain wasn't getting worse, of their empty refrigerator and the stack of medical bills growing taller each day. The offer was everything she'd dreamed of. But something felt wrong. "What happens if I say no?" The being's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. "Your mother dies within 3 days. Your family loses their home. You continue your slow slide into poverty and despair." It paused, tilting its head. "But why would you refuse? We offer you everything you desire." "Because you're not telling me everything," Maya said, surprised by her own boldness. "What happens to the people who had the objects you want me to steal? What happens to me if I can't get them?" For the first time, the being looked genuinely impressed. "Clever child. Yes, there would be consequences for failure. And yes, some of your targets might suffer in the process. But weigh that against your mother's life, against your family's future. Surely a few strangers matter less than those you love?" Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision crushing down on her. Through the dollhouse, she could hear her mother coughing in the next room, a wet, desperate sound that made her chest tighten with fear. When she opened her eyes, the being was watching her with patient certainty, as if it already knew what she would choose. "I need to think about it," Maya said finally. "Of course. But remember, your mother's condition worsens with each passing hour." The being gestured, and the mist began to swirl again, obscuring the crystalline chamber. "We will speak again tomorrow. Choose wisely, little one. Some opportunities come only once." The dollhouse door swung shut with a soft thud, leaving Maya staring at the miniature facade. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together to make it stop. From down the hall came another bout of coughing, followed by her father's worried voice. Maya looked at the dollhouse, then at her bedroom door, torn between two impossible choices. She had less than 24 hours to decide whether to save her family by becoming something she might not recognize. Maya's hands trembled as she placed the tiny silver key into the dollhouse's front door lock. The metal was warm against her fingertips, pulsing with the same rhythm as her heartbeat. Around her, the storage unit felt smaller than before, the shadows deeper and more alive. "You sure about this?" whispered Jake from behind her. His voice cracked with nervous energy. Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure about anything anymore. The dollhouse had shown her glimpses of what could be. Her father walking through their real front door, her mother's laugh echoing through rooms that weren't empty anymore, bills paid and worry lines smoothed from her parents' faces. But Mrs. Chen's warnings haunted her. Every wish comes with a price. Some doors should never be opened. She turned the key. The click echoed impossibly loud in the confined space, followed by a sound like wind chimes caught in a storm. The dollhouse began to glow, soft blue light seeping from every window and crack. The miniature rooms inside shifted and rearranged themselves, furniture sliding across floors no bigger than Maya's palm. "Maya," Jake breathed, pointing at the house. "Look." The tiny living room was changing. The perfect miniature furniture was dissolving, replaced by exact replicas of their own shabby couch, their coffee table with the ring stains, even the stack of overdue bills that sat by the window. It was their apartment, shrunk down to impossible smallness, but more real than any dollhouse had a right to be. In the miniature kitchen, two figures appeared. Maya gasped and leaned closer. Her parents, no taller than her thumb, moved through the space. Her mother was cooking, actually cooking, not heating up another can of soup. Her father sat at the table, not slumped with exhaustion, but relaxed, reading something that made him smile. "Is that really them?" Jake asked. Maya reached toward the house, then stopped. The warmth from the key was spreading up her arm now, and she could feel something else, a presence, ancient and patient, watching from within the dollhouse walls. "You could join them," a voice whispered, though Maya couldn't tell if it spoke aloud or directly into her mind. "Step through. Save your family. Give them everything they need." "How?" Maya whispered back. The front door of the dollhouse swung open wider. The blue light intensified, and Maya could see that the opening was no longer just a dollhouse door. It was a tunnel, stretching back into impossible depth. At the far end, she glimpsed her parents' faces, turned toward her expectantly. "Bring what you love most," the voice continued. "Offer it freely, and step through. Your family will have everything. Your father will come home. Your mother will stop crying when she thinks you can't hear." Maya's heart clenched. She did hear her mother crying, late at night when the bills came and the phone calls from creditors started. She saw how her father's absence was eating them all alive, how her mother's smiles had become performance art. "What do I have to give up?" she asked. The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, the scene in the dollhouse shifted. Maya saw herself in the miniature apartment, but she looked different, hollow somehow, her eyes vacant. The doll Maya moved mechanically through the rooms, and though her tiny parents smiled at her, they seemed to look right through her. Understanding hit Maya like ice water. The house wanted her memories, her personality, herself. She could save her family by giving up everything that made her Maya. "Don't do it," Jake said urgently, as if reading her thoughts. "Maya, look at yourself in there. That's not you anymore." But Maya was thinking of her mother's tears, of the eviction notice hidden under magazines, of how her father's last letter had sounded defeated in a way that scared her more than his absence. What was her personality worth against her family's happiness? She reached toward the door. Jake grabbed her wrist. "No, there has to be another way." "What other way?" Maya snapped, whirling to face him. "We're broke, Jake. My dad's never coming home. My mom works 3 jobs and we still can't pay rent. This thing is offering to fix everything by erasing you." "Maybe that's okay." The words tore out of Maya's throat. "Maybe if I wasn't here, they'd have enough money. Maybe if I disappeared, they could start over somewhere better." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the dollhouse seemed to pause, its blue glow dimming slightly. Jake stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Maya Chen, you are the stupidest smart person I know." Despite everything, Maya almost smiled. "Thanks. Your family doesn't need you to disappear. They need you to be you. That's what families do. They stick together through the bad stuff." The dollhouse pulsed brighter, as if impatient with their delay. Through its windows, Maya could see her doll parents beginning to fade at the edges. "Choose quickly," the voice urged. "The door won't stay open forever." Maya looked at the key in her hand, then at Jake, then at the impossible choice before her. The miniature house pulsed with an eerie blue light as Maya pressed her palm against its tiny front door. The familiar tingle shot up her arm, but this time something felt different, stronger, more urgent. The house seemed to be calling to her with desperate intensity. "Maya, honey, we need to talk." Mom's voice drifted up from the kitchen, heavy with exhaustion and worry. Maya could hear the rustle of papers. Probably more bills, more notices, more evidence of their crumbling world. She glanced at the dollhouse one more time before reluctantly heading downstairs. Mom sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by a sea of white envelopes and yellow notices. Her shoulders sagged under an invisible weight that seemed to grow heavier each day. "The bank called again," Mom said without looking up. "We have until Friday to come up with the mortgage payment or—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Friday. That was 3 days away. Maya's stomach twisted into knots. What about the insurance money from Dad's accident? Still tied up in legal proceedings. Could be months before we see anything. Mom's voice cracked slightly. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I've failed you and your brother." "No, you haven't," Maya said fiercely, but her mind was already racing upstairs to the dollhouse. Whatever lived in that miniature world had offered to help before. Maybe it was time to take that offer seriously. That night, Maya waited until she heard Mom's soft snores before creeping to her bedroom. The dollhouse sat on her desk, its windows glowing with that otherworldly blue light. She knelt before it, her heart pounding. "I need your help," she whispered to the tiny structure. The light intensified, and suddenly the front door swung open on its minuscule hinges. A voice, soft as silk and twice as dangerous, floated from within. "Little Maya, I wondered when you would return to me." The voice belonged to the woman she'd glimpsed before, tall, elegant, with silver hair and eyes like winter stars. But now Maya could see her more clearly through the dollhouse windows, moving through the miniature rooms with fluid grace. "You said you could help my family," Maya said. "Indeed I can, but help always comes with a price." The woman's laugh was like wind chimes in a storm. "Are you prepared to pay it?" Maya hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, that she was walking into a trap, but the image of her mother's defeated expression pushed her forward. "What kind of price?" "A simple trade. Your world for mine. You step through my door, become part of my realm, and I'll ensure your family's financial troubles disappear forever. Your mother will find the insurance settlement approved. A mysterious benefactor will pay off the mortgage, and your brother's medical bills will vanish like morning mist." The offer hung in the air like a poisonous flower, beautiful and deadly. "But I'd never see them again," Maya said. "Perhaps not, but they would be safe, prosperous, happy. Isn't that what love truly means? Sacrifice?" Maya stared at the dollhouse, her vision blurring with unshed tears. The woman made it sound so reasonable, so noble, but something felt wrong, twisted. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" The silver-haired woman appeared at one of the tiny windows, her face pressed against the glass like a prisoner. "Because, dear child, I need you more than you know. This realm is dying, and only fresh young energy can revive it. Your life force will breathe new vitality into my world." There it was, the truth behind the beautiful offer. Maya would become a battery, a source of power to feed whatever dark magic sustained this place. "I need time to think," Maya said, backing away from the dollhouse. "Of course." The woman's smile was sharp as broken glass. But remember, Friday draws near. Tick-tock, little Maya, tick-tock. The blue light faded, leaving Maya alone in her dark bedroom. She climbed into bed, pulling the covers over her head, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mom's worried face, heard the desperation in her voice. Outside her window, storm clouds gathered, blocking out the stars. Thunder rumbled in the distance, growing closer with each passing hour. Maya felt as if the storm was inside her chest, lightning crackling through her thoughts. She had 3 days to decide: sacrifice herself to save her family, or find another way to solve their problems. But what other way was there? They'd exhausted every option, every resource. As rain began pattering against her window, Maya made a silent promise to herself. Before she gave up and accepted the silver-haired woman's bargain, she would explore every other possibility. There had to be another answer. There had to be. The dollhouse sat silent on her desk, waiting patiently for her decision, its dark windows reflecting the storm outside like hollow, hungry eyes. Maya's fingers trembled as she reached for the tiny brass key that had appeared on the dollhouse's front porch. The miniature house hummed with an energy that made her teeth ache, and she could feel something fundamental shifting in the air around her. Through the dollhouse windows, she glimpsed shadows moving, shadows that looked disturbingly like her family. "Maya, what are you doing?" Her mother's voice came from behind her, sharp with exhaustion and worry. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Maya spun around, clutching the dollhouse protectively. Her mother stood in the doorway of the storage unit, backlit by the harsh fluorescent lights of the hallway. She looked older than Maya remembered, lines etched deeper around her eyes, her shoulders sagging under the weight of their mounting problems. "Mom, you have to see this," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I've found something that can help us." Her mother stepped closer, and her expression shifted from annoyance to confusion as she took in the dollhouse. The miniature structure seemed to pulse with its own inner light, casting dancing shadows on the concrete walls of the storage unit. The tiny furniture moved of its own accord, chairs rocking gently, curtains swaying without any breeze. "Maya, where did you get this?" Her mother's voice carried a note Maya had never heard before, fear mixed with something that might have been recognition. "I bought the storage unit," Maya admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "With the $50 from my birthday. I know you're mad, but Mom, this thing is special. It shows things. It shows what could happen." Her mother crouched down beside her, reaching out tentatively toward the dollhouse before pulling her hand back. "Maya, this is—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "This isn't possible." "Watch," Maya said, picking up one of the tiny dolls that represented her father. As her fingers made contact with the miniature figure, the dollhouse's front room filled with warm golden light. Through the windows, they could see a perfect recreation of their old living room, the one from before her father lost his job, before the bills started piling up, before everything began falling apart. Her mother gasped, leaning forward despite herself. In the dollhouse, tiny versions of their family sat around a dinner table, laughing and talking. Her father's miniature face was relaxed and happy, free from the stress lines that had become permanent fixtures in recent months. "It's showing us how things used to be," Maya explained, carefully moving the doll to different rooms. "But it can show other things too, futures, possibilities." As if responding to her words, the scene in the dollhouse shifted. Now the tiny family was in a different house altogether, larger, brighter, with a yard where miniature children played. Her parents stood together in the kitchen, smiling as they watched their kids through the window. "This could be us," Maya whispered, "if we make the right choices." But her mother was backing away, her face pale. "Maya, put it down. Whatever this thing is, it's not natural. It's not safe. Mom, please." The dollhouse suddenly went dark, all the warm light extinguished in an instant. When it flickered back to life, the scene had changed completely. Now the miniature family was scattered, The father doll lying motionless in one corner, the mother doll hunched over a table covered in what looked like bills and legal documents, and the children dolls huddled together in an empty room. Maya jerked her hand back from the doll she'd been holding, but the dark vision continued playing out in the dollhouse windows. She watched in horror as the miniature version of herself grew thinner and more hollow-eyed, as her brother disappeared from the scenes entirely, as her mother aged years in moments. "Make it stop," her mother said, her voice tight with panic. "Maya, make it stop." "I don't know how," Maya said, tears streaming down her face. She reached for the dollhouse again, desperate to change the scene back to something hopeful, but her mother grabbed her wrist. "Don't touch it," her mother said firmly. "Maya, listen to me. Some things are too dangerous to play with, no matter how much we want them to help us." "But what if it's real?" Maya asked, pulling against her mother's grip. "What if it can really show us how to fix everything?" Her mother was quiet for a long moment, staring at the dollhouse where the dark vision continued to unfold. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible over the humming energy emanating from the miniature house. "Then we need to be very, very careful about what we ask it to show us," she said, "because some knowledge comes with a price we might not be willing to pay." The dollhouse pulsed once more, and Maya could swear she heard tiny voices calling her name from within its walls, voices that sounded exactly like her family, but somehow wrong, desperate, pleading for something she didn't understand. Maya's fingers trembled as she placed her palm against the dollhouse's front door. The wood felt warm, almost alive, pulsing with the same rhythm as her heartbeat. Through the tiny windows she could see the shadow figures moving more frantically now, as if they sensed her presence. "I need to understand what you want," she whispered to the miniature house. "I need to know how to help my family without losing myself." The house responded immediately. The walls began to glow with that familiar golden light, but this time it was gentler, more inviting than demanding. The front door swung open on its miniature hinges, revealing not the cramped interior she expected, but a swirling vortex of memories and possibilities. Maya closed her eyes and stepped forward. When she opened them again, she was standing in her own living room, but it was different, cleaner, brighter, filled with laughter she hadn't heard in months. Her father sat at the kitchen table, healthy and whole, helping Tommy with his homework. Her mother hummed while cooking dinner, her face free of the worry lines that had become so familiar. "This could be yours," a voice said behind her. Maya turned to see herself, but older, maybe 16 or 17. This other Maya wore expensive clothes and carried herself with a confidence that felt foreign. "All you have to do is let the house complete its work," the older Maya continued. "Stop fighting it, stop questioning. Just accept the gift it's offering." "What gift?" Maya asked, though part of her already knew. Perfect control, perfect order, no more chaos, no more pain, no more uncertainty. The house can fix everything. Your father's illness, your mother's depression, your family's financial problems, all of it. Maya looked around the perfect living room again. It was everything she'd dreamed of, everything she'd prayed for during those long nights when her father's coughing kept everyone awake. But something felt wrong, hollow. "Where's Tommy?" she asked. The older Maya's smile flickered. "He's fine. He's perfect now." "That's not what I asked." The scene shifted, and Maya found herself in Tommy's bedroom. Her little brother sat at his desk, perfectly still, his homework spread before him in unnaturally neat rows. His pencil moved across the paper with mechanical precision, but his eyes were empty, glassy. "Tommy?" Maya called out. He didn't respond, didn't even blink. He just continued writing the same mathematical equation over and over. 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 4. Maya's stomach lurched. She spun to face her older self. "What did you do to him?" "Nothing. The house simply removed his chaos, his unpredictability. He'll never cause problems again, never make mistakes, never disappoint anyone. He's not Tommy anymore," Maya said, horror creeping into her voice. "He's better than Tommy. He's perfect." The room shifted again, and Maya saw her parents. They sat on the couch, holding hands, smiling identical serene smiles, but their eyes held the same empty quality as Tommy's. They were alive but not living, present but not real. "This isn't saving them," Maya said. "This is stealing them." The older Maya's expression hardened. "This is what you wanted. This is what you've been working towards since the day you bought that storage unit. You can't pretend otherwise now." Maya felt the truth of those words hit her like a physical blow. She had wanted this. She had been willing to sacrifice anything, everything, for her family's happiness. But seeing it laid out before her, she finally understood what Mrs. Chen had been trying to tell her. Love without choice wasn't love at all. "No," Maya said firmly. "This isn't what I want." The perfect living room began to crack around the edges, like a photograph being burned. The older Maya's face contorted with rage. "You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. Your family will suffer because of your selfishness." "Maybe," Maya admitted. "But at least they'll be themselves while they suffer. At least they'll be real." The vision shattered completely, and Maya found herself back in the storage unit, kneeling before the dollhouse. But now she could see it clearly for what it truly was, not a portal to salvation, but a prison disguised as paradise. The shadow figures in the windows weren't beckoning her to join them, they were warning her to stay away. Maya stood up, her decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. She understood now that the dollhouse had been testing her all along, waiting to see if she would choose easy perfection over difficult truth. She had made her choice. But as she turned to leave the storage unit, the dollhouse began to shake violently on its table. The temperature in the room plummeted, and Maya's breath came out in visible puffs. Behind her, she heard the unmistakable sound of tiny doors slamming and miniature windows breaking. The house wasn't going to let her go without a fight. The shadows in Maya's room stretched longer as afternoon faded into evening. But she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the dollhouse, watching the tiny figures of her family moving through their miniature lives with mechanical precision. The spell she'd cast was holding, but she could feel it fraying at the edges like worn fabric. Her mother downstairs was humming, actually humming, as she prepared dinner. The eviction notice had mysteriously disappeared from their kitchen table, replaced by what looked like a lease renewal agreement signed in unfamiliar handwriting. Maya's father had called from work to say he'd received an unexpected promotion, his voice bright with hope for the first time in months. Everything was perfect. Everything was wrong. Maya's hands trembled as she reached toward the dollhouse, then pulled back. She'd tried 3 times now to reverse what she'd done, but each attempt only seemed to strengthen the spell's hold. The tiny Maya figure in the dollhouse looked up at her with painted eyes that seemed too knowing, too aware. A soft knock on her door made her jump. "Maya?" Her mother's voice was warm, concerned. "Dinner's ready, sweetheart." "Coming, Mom?" Maya's voice cracked. She grabbed a throw blanket and carefully draped it over the dollhouse, though she could still feel its presence pulsing beneath the fabric like a heartbeat. Downstairs, her family sat around their small dining table, faces glowing in the soft light. Her father was animated, talking about his new position and the raise that came with it. Her mother smiled and nodded, occasionally reaching over to squeeze his hand. Even Marcus seemed different, less sullen, more engaged. But Maya could see the subtle wrongness in their expressions. The way her mother's smile never quite reached her eyes, how her father's enthusiasm felt hollow, like an echo of genuine emotion. Marcus laughed at something their father said, but the sound was just slightly off-key. "Maya, you've barely touched your food," her mother observed, and Maya realized she'd been staring at her plate for several minutes. "I'm not really hungry." Her father leaned forward, and for a moment, Maya thought she saw something flicker behind his eyes. Confusion, fear, the real him trying to break through. But then it was gone, replaced by that artificial warmth. "You feeling okay, kiddo? You seem a little pale." The concern in his voice was real, even if everything else wasn't. That made it worse somehow. She was puppeting her family's lives while their genuine love for her remained intact, trapped beneath layers of magical manipulation. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just tired." After dinner, Maya retreated to her room and pulled the blanket off the dollhouse. The miniature world seemed brighter now, more vivid. She could see tiny details she'd never noticed before: the grain of wood in the furniture, the individual threads in the miniature rugs, the almost imperceptible rise and fall of the tiny figures' chests as they breathed. That's when she saw it. A new room had appeared in the dollhouse, one that definitely hadn't been there before. It was a perfect replica of her own bedroom, complete with a miniature dollhouse sitting on a tiny desk. And inside that dollhouse, Maya could just make out an even smaller room containing an even tinier dollhouse. The pattern repeated endlessly inward, each layer smaller than the last, until her eyes couldn't follow it anymore. But she understood what she was seeing. The magic wasn't just controlling her family, it was expanding, creating infinite recursive loops of reality. Each layer was another trap, another prison. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Haven't heard from you in days. Everything okay?" Maya stared at the message, realizing she'd been so consumed with fixing her family that she'd completely cut herself off from her best friend. She started to type a response, then stopped. What could she possibly say? That she'd used magic to turn her family into dolls? That their perfect happiness was built on a foundation of supernatural manipulation? Instead, she set the phone aside and turned back to the dollhouse. There had to be a way to undo this without destroying her family completely. The old woman at the storage facility had mentioned rules, consequences. There was always a price for this kind of magic, and Maya was beginning to understand that the price wasn't just what she'd paid, it was what she was becoming. She watched the tiny Maya figure in the dollhouse, noting how it moved with increasing independence. Sometimes it seemed to act before Maya herself made any conscious decision, as if it was developing its own will. The thought sent ice through her veins. Time was running out. She could feel it in the weight of the air, in the way shadows seemed to move on their own around the edges of her vision. The magic was growing stronger, and with each passing hour, it became harder to remember what her family had been like before, their real personalities, their genuine emotions, their authentic selves. Tomorrow, Maya decided, tomorrow she would find a way to break the spell, even if it meant losing everything. The dollhouse hummed with an energy that made Maya's teeth ache. She knelt before it in the storage unit, her hands trembling as she reached for the tiny front door. 3 days had passed since she'd discovered the truth about what lay inside. 3 days since she'd learned that the miniature world wasn't just a replica, but a gateway to the memories her family had lost. Her mother's medical bills sat crumpled in her backpack, red-stamped with final notices. The eviction letter had arrived that morning, giving them 72 hours. Maya had run here straight from school, knowing this was her last chance to make things right. The house's windows glowed with warm amber light, just as they had the first time she'd touched it. But now Maya understood what that light represented. Fragments of her father's mind scattered across the threshold between reality and remembrance. The accident that had stolen his memories hadn't destroyed them. It had simply hidden them away in this impossible place. She pressed her palm against the dollhouse's roof, and the familiar sensation washed over her. The feeling of shrinking, of falling, of stepping between worlds. The storage unit dissolved around her, replaced by the cozy interior she'd come to know so well. But something was different this time. The miniature furniture seemed more solid, more real. The photographs on the tiny mantelpiece showed faces she recognized now. Her parents on their wedding day, herself as a baby, family gatherings she'd only heard about in stories. Each image pulsed with a gentle light, waiting. "You came back," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to find her father standing in the doorway, but not as she knew him in the real world. This version of him had clear, focused eyes and a smile that reached all the way to his soul. This was the father from before the accident, whole, complete, remembering everything. "I had to," Maya whispered. "We're going to lose the house. Mom can't handle everything alone anymore, and you don't even remember who we are half the time." He stepped closer, his form flickering like candlelight. "I remember here. In this place between places I remember everything. But Maya, taking these memories back, it comes with a price. What kind of price? She'd suspected there would be one. Nothing this powerful came free. The memories belong to this realm now. To reclaim them, something else must take their place. The dollhouse feeds on possibility, on the energy of what could be. He gestured to the glowing photographs. If you take these memories back to me, you'll have to leave something equally precious behind. Maya's chest tightened. Like what? Your childhood, he said softly. Your wonder, your ability to see magic in the world, the very gift that allowed you to find this place. You'll grow up instantly, Maya. You'll become responsible for things no 12-year-old should carry. She stared at the photographs, each one containing a piece of the father she'd lost. Birthday parties where he'd actually remembered her age. Bedtime stories told with perfect recall of all her favorite characters. Conversations about her dreams and fears back when he could remember them from day to day. But if I don't, Maya said, we lose everything anyway. Not everything. You'll still have each other, even if it's hard, even if I'm not complete. Maya closed her eyes, thinking of her mother's exhausted face, the way she tried to hide her tears when she thought no one was looking. She thought of her father's confused expressions when he forgot her name, the way he sometimes stared at family photos like they showed strangers. I can't watch our family fall apart, she said finally. I can't let Mom carry this burden alone anymore. She reached for the largest photograph, her parents' wedding picture. The moment her fingers touched it, warmth flooded through her, followed by an immediate sense of loss. She felt something precious drain away, a lightness she hadn't realized she carried. The world seemed suddenly heavier, more complex, filled with adult concerns and responsibilities she hadn't noticed before. But the photograph solidified in her hand, becoming real and warm and full of love. One by one, she gathered the glowing images. With each touch, she felt herself changing, aging not in body but in spirit. The magic that had surrounded her perception of the world dimmed, replaced by stark understanding of mortgages and medical bills and the weight of sacrifice. When the last photograph was in her arms, her father smiled sadly. You're so much braver than I ever was, Maya. Take care of your mother. Take care of yourself. The dollhouse began to fade around her, its magic spent. Maya felt herself growing, expanding, returning to the storage unit with arms full of photographs that would restore her father's mind and her family's hope. She emerged into the harsh fluorescent lighting of the storage facility, no longer a child who believed in impossible things, but a young woman who had made an impossible choice. The dollhouse sat before her, dark and ordinary now, just wood and paint and fading dreams. The dollhouse sat motionless on Maya's bedroom floor, its tiny windows dark and lifeless. 3 days had passed since she'd emerged from the miniature world, and the silence from within felt like a held breath that might never be released. Maya knelt beside it, her fingers hovering over the delicate roof. Please, she whispered. I kept my promise. I chose my family. Isn't that what you wanted? Nothing. The house remained stubbornly ordinary, just painted wood and glass that caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through her real bedroom window. Maya, honey? Her mother's voice drifted up the stairs. Dinner's ready. For the first time in weeks, there would actually be dinner. Her father had returned home yesterday with news that he'd found work, not just any job, but a position with the city planning department that paid well and offered benefits. The coincidence felt too perfect, too aligned with her desperate wish in the dollhouse world. At the dinner table, Maya watched her parents serve generous portions of homemade lasagna. Her father looked healthier than he had in months. The stress lines around his eyes softened. Her mother hummed while she cut thick slices of garlic bread, a sound Maya had almost forgotten. How was school today? Her father asked, and Maya realized it was the first time in forever that he'd had the energy to ask about her day. Fine, she said, though she'd spent most of it staring out classroom windows, thinking about the dollhouse. Dad, do you believe in magic, real magic? Her parents exchanged glances. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" her mother said. Maya considered telling them everything. The storage unit, the bidding war she'd won with her birthday money, the impossible world she'd discovered. But how could she explain that their sudden good fortune might be connected to a choice she'd made in a place that couldn't possibly exist? "Just wondering," she said. That night, Maya lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sound of her parents talking quietly in the next room. Not arguing about bills or whispering about which utilities they might lose next, but actually talking, planning, dreaming about the future. She crept to the dollhouse and carefully lifted its roof. The tiny rooms were perfectly arranged, just as she'd left them, but they felt hollow, empty of the magic that had once pulsed through their miniature walls. "I don't understand," she said to the darkness. "I made my choice. I chose reality. So why does this feel wrong?" A soft knock at her door made her freeze. "Maya?" Her mother peeked in. "I saw your light under the door. Couldn't sleep." Her mother sat on the bed's edge, noticing the dollhouse for the first time. "Where did this come from?" "It's beautiful. I bought it with my birthday money, from a storage unit auction." $50 for this?" Her mother leaned closer, examining the intricate details. "Honey, this is extraordinary craftsmanship. Look at these tiny hinges. The way the wallpaper is perfectly scaled. Someone put incredible love into making this." Maya's throat tightened. Someone had. The caretaker, whose face she could barely remember now, had poured decades of hope into maintaining that impossible world. "Mom, what if you could have anything you wanted, but getting it meant someone else would lose everything?" Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "I suppose I'd ask myself if what I wanted was really mine to take, and whether I could live with the cost." She brushed Maya's hair back. "Why? Just a story I'm thinking about." After her mother left, Maya stared at the dollhouse until her eyes burned. The caretaker had said the choice was hers, but he'd never explained what would happen to him, to his world, if she chose to leave. Had her decision to return to reality condemned him to eternal solitude? She thought about the garden where they'd talked, how real the flowers had smelled, how solid the ground had felt beneath her feet. That world hadn't felt like an illusion. It had felt like home. Maya picked up one of the tiny dolls, a girl figure with dark hair like her own. In the dollhouse world, this would have been her avatar, her way of existing in that space. Now it was just plastic and paint. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and this time she wasn't speaking to the dollhouse. She was speaking to the caretaker, wherever he might be. "I'm sorry I was afraid. I'm sorry I left you alone." The doll grew warm in her palm. Maya's heart hammered as she watched color bloom across the tiny figure's cheeks, watched its painted eyes blink once, slowly. The dollhouse windows began to glow with soft golden light. She understood now. The choice had never been between magic and reality. It had been about understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is return to help someone else find their way home. Maya placed the doll carefully in the dollhouse's front hall and whispered, "I'm coming back."